Okay, so, hi everyone. You've probably noticed that I have a special guest here today with me, one of my bestest friends from school, Devin. He actually talked to me about reading a book, and I was super hyped about that. And so here we are doing Hyperion.
Hyperion,
yes.
whippy.
And so we both read it, and we are ready to talk about it. Devin, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Devin. I like sci-fi books and fantasy books and nonfiction books. That is the entirety of my book career, I suppose.
Nice. But you're like a musician and singer.
I also do that.
Yeah. And one of my friends, and so we're doing this. Also, another thing to mention is this video is very high quality and with a bunch of fancy stuff because my dad, very kind, let us borrow his office space for this video, so huge shout out to him. I'm super grateful for that. So let's get into the spoiler-free review of Hyperion. So why don't you go first?
So basically, I will say, it is a very good book. I liked it a lot. It's not for the faint of heart, however, I will say.
Yes.
Going into this, I thought it was going to be a normal sci-fi book. However, it was not a normal sci-fi book.
Yeah, seconded. Warning, mature content ahead. This was even, I would say, a bit too mature for me. So I'm 16, so I would say this is probably, if you are a teenager and you're feeling super mature and you think you can handle it, there is like sexual content and also some like graphic violence stuff.
Yeah, other than that, I mean, it's a super interesting book. Like, this book goes over topics you wouldn't think a sci-fi book would go over.
Very true. This is one of the most plot twistiest books I've ever read, just because each chapter has its own little mini story, and so each one has several plot twists. So every chapter, it's very gripping with how it progresses forward in the story.
Yeah, I will say, be prepared, because there is about 500 pages in this book, but only 7 chapters. So if you're the type of guy to like read 1 chapter a day,
yeah,
that's going to be very hard to do with this.
It's this size, 500 pages. You know, you can see that if you feel up to reading it. And another thing is, I thought this was going to be very standalone. I don't know where I heard that, but I thought this was a great pick for me and Devin to read because I was like, oh well, I've heard that you can just read Hyperion and you know the other books in the Hyperion Cantos. You know, they're not really necessary. It ends on a cliffhanger. I mean, I was trying not to spoil all that, but it ends on a cliffhanger. So be forewarned about that also.
I mean, you could just not read any of the other books and be happy with this.
Yeah.
But you might not. You might want to read the other ones.
Yeah, because each chapter, like we said, is its own miniature story. So in that sense, once you've read all 6 chapters, with each miniature story, it kind of feels very resolved and concluded. So in that sense, you don't really need to read the other books. But for the overarching plot of the book, it ends on a total cliffhanger.
Yeah. So that's basically everything non-spoilery, right?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah, I'd say.
So, if you like sci-fi and you want something different, I recommend this. If you're mature, I guess.
Oh boy.
So, the main story is centered around 7 pilgrims that go on a pilgrimage to go see the Shrike, which is this deity, I guess, that kills people for some reason or another. And basically, 7 people were chosen to go on this pilgrimage, all because they have a connection to the planet Hyperion and the Shrike.
Yeah.
So basically, they're all going to go on the pilgrimage and go beg the Shrike for world peace. I don't know.
Well, yeah, apparently according to legend, if you go to the Shrike and you like survive the pilgrimage, you can ask for 1 wish, but that's just a legend and there isn't any evidence of that happening. Doesn't make sense how they would get their wish anyway.
Yeah, anyway, there's 7 pilgrims and they all drew cards to tell stories about how they're connected to Hyperion. So the first one was Father Hoyt. Want to talk about Chapter 1?
Chapter 1. Yes, let's talk about Chapter 1.
Okay, so we were talking about this book at an earlier date. I said Chapter 1 was my favorite. I want to retract that statement. It wasn't my favorite, but I did find it the most intriguing out of all of them.
That's partly true for me as well.
Yeah. So would you like to give a rundown of kind of what Chapter 1 was?
Yeah, so in Chapter 1, it is basically, the core of Chapter 1 is about the journals that they're reading about this priest who went to kind of like the center of Hyperion and met with the people living there who were childlike and very creepy. Honestly, this first chapter reads kind of like a horror story. Like it is very disconcerting and creepy with these like childlike people who like will kill you if you do the wrong thing. It's kind of that vein, the first chapter is. And so it's kind of like this horror mystery element where there's this priest who has, for some reason, been spared by these creepy childlike people. And then he figures out like all the things with the cruciform and all that creepy shenanigans. And I would definitely agree that it is one of the most entertaining ones. It wasn't my favorite, but it was certainly, I think, overall the most interesting one in how just there were so many things that were being revealed and it had that mystery horror element to it as well.
But so this is supposed to be one of the character Father Hoyt's, if that's how you pronounce his name, his story. He talks about a completely different person. I forgot his name.
Yeah.
He was a priest though. So basically, the end of the story, the priest dies, and then Father Hoyt goes to try to find his body. I don't know if I missed a sentence or something, but basically all these childlike creatures have this thing on their chest, which is a cruciform.
Yeah.
What the cruciform does it keep them immortal? Is that what it was?
Yeah, it keeps them immortal where it just like, but they turn all baby-like and creepy.
So by the end of it, Father Hoyt goes to try to find the original priest, and he finds him.
This is what happened. So Father Hoyt went to find like Father Dure.
Yeah.
Was that his name?
Yeah, that was his name.
Father Hoyt went to find Father Dure, and where we left off in Father Dure's story is he was planning to try to kill himself with like these lightning trees, the Tesla trees that like get struck by lightning or something like that, or they flare up or something. I don't really understand how that works, but there are these trees that like light on fire, so he was like, oh, I maybe can kill myself with that because Father Dure also had one of these cruciforms on him that he knew would make him immortal, but also deteriorate his mind until he was like a baby. So Father Hoyt goes to find him, but then same thing as Father Dure happens to him, where everyone else that he's with gets killed, but then they spare him because he's a priest, so he has a cross. So they're like, oh, you're of the cruciform. So, but then they attach a cruciform to him, Father Hoyt, and then Father Hoyt goes and finds Father Dure's body, and he is dead. But then, because how the cruciforms work is that if the multiple of them can attach onto one person, so what he does is he already has one that makes him immortal. But then he goes, when he like sees Father Dure's body, he goes and he touches it and stuff. And then the other cruciform latches onto him, so he has two. But yeah.
So that was a little weird. That was the very condensed version of what kind of happens in Chapter 1. There were a few other things. Was there anything that other interesting that happened during Chapter 1?
Well, like everything is connected to the Shrike, who is this guy on the front. I mean, you've probably already known this because you've read it. But there was that one scene where like the creepy cruciform child people were like worshiping the Shrike or something. Yeah. That never got explained, at least in this first book, though.
Yeah.
Okay, Chapter 2 now?
Do you want to? Is there anything else about Chapter 1 that we should discuss?
Another thing to mention. There are... So there was this kind of prologue thing where we introduced to the consul, who is this kind of person who we just kind of... The exposition is kind of done through his point of view, explaining about all what Devin just said about like the 7 people. So that's how we kind of get explained that. But there's another additional thing where the consul is told by this government person that one of them is, one of the 7 pilgrims is a spy for the ousters, who are like this other human group who are not part of the main human group, but are like, they have, they splintered off a long time ago and they've kind of evolved even a little differently to like live in space and stuff. So the ousters are hated by most of the people, and one of them is an ouster spy. It's also something that's like at the beginning of the book as well.
Yeah, so... Yeah, that's basically everything with Chapter 1. Father Hoyt, at the end of Chapter 1, is revealed that he has the cruciform on him. Yeah. So kind of for the rest of the story, he's just like dying the entire time. Yeah. No one really cares about it for whatever reason. He's just dying in the corner and everyone else is like, oh, yeah.
That's one of the things is Father Hoyt was definitely one of the weakest characters. Yeah. Because his chapter wasn't even about him. Yeah. It was about Father Dure, or however you say that. And then even for the rest of it, like, because he has the cruciform, for reference, when you have the cruciform on you and you go away from the area where they live, it hurts insanely bad. So basically Father Hoyt just is in insane pain, and he's also just on drugs to deal with that the whole time. So he's totally out of it and doesn't talk much.
Yeah. Okay. So on to my favorite chapter.
Boy, this chapter, I mean, you guys will love this chapter. Boy, it was interesting for sure.
Yeah, so I don't know how in detail you want to get about this chapter. So there's this guy.
Fedman Kassad?
Yeah, him. Colonel Kassad, right? How can I explain this in simple terms? Oh.
Well, do you want to explain how he first?
Sure. So basically, what happened was, so he was in like Force.
He was in a simulation thing.
Yeah. So the space police in this book is called Force.
Yeah.
It's like Force colon some random word. I don't know how they say it.
Yeah.
It's just like Force space. Anyway, he's part of this program called Force, and he's doing simulation training. And in these simulations, he meets a girl. He meets a girl whom he has relations with. I will say that.
Yeah, repeatedly, and this is where the content restrictions, the mature audience stuff comes into play. Mostly just in this chapter. This chapter actually has some of the worst gore and some of the worst sexual content because he's just repeatedly hooking up with this chick, and then he's also like this soldier dude who's like shooting people.
Yeah. You could only imagine my surprise when I went from chapter 1 to chapter 2. I was like, interesting. Chapter 1's pretty fun, you know? Chapter 2, oh my goodness, what's going on here?
That was one of the things I actually did enjoy a lot about Hyperion, is that the different chapters have very distinct feels, which the author Dan Simmons did a great job of really making each chapter feel distinct because they are supposed to be, narrated by a different person. So each chapter does feel very distinct in its style and the way it feels.
I mean, they truly are their own little stories.
Yeah.
So, anyway, with chapter 2. Eventually, he stops doing the simulations and he just stops seeing the girl. And then, long story short, he ends up in what happened to him, actually, that he ended up in the spacecraft?
Well, he was, on this soldiery mission for the Force or whatever, and then he was, outside Hyperion because they were, fighting in Hyperion. Yeah. But then, there was a whole thing where the Ousters were attacking them because that's who the soldiers primarily fight, because that's the enemy. So he's fighting them, and then he crashes on Hyperion.
No, before that, how'd he get in the ship though?
Oh,
he was protecting someone, and then a building crashed down on him.
Yeah.
So that happened, and he ended up in a medical ship that was flying over a planet called Garden and a planet called Hyperion, which is the name of the book, and his ship gets attacked by Ousters, and basically, somehow, he kills the Ousters in the area and steals their ship.
Yeah.
Except they kind of also destroyed the ship on accident, so he crash lands on Hyperion. And there, the girl he met in the simulation is actually real. Would you like to talk about that?
Okay, so then what happens is he crash lands on Hyperion, right? And then these, they're the evil people,
the Ousters?
The Ousters. The Ousters are coming down chasing after him, but then his girlfriend shows up with the Shrike, and apparently she worships the Shrike or something. There is a church in this world that worships the Shrike, but she does apparently or something like that. But basically, the Shrike grants Kassad and this girl, they all get super fast. The powers of the Shrike. We didn't go over this actually. The Shrike can teleport and slow down time and stuff.
I don't think he could teleport. He's just really insanely fast.
Oh yeah, that's true. He doesn't teleport, but he can slow down time so much that he basically teleports because he just appears there because he's so fast. But yeah, you're right. He can kind of control time and distort time for himself and other people apparently. Basically, then they wipe out all the Ousters, and then the Shrike just goes away, right? And then
and then there's a really weird scene that I do not understand at all.
Okay, I do not understand this at all. This was so weird, and also, I was very much, I'm going to be honest, I wanted to skip these pages, but I did not because I'm I'm talking about it, I'm kind of doing a review on YouTube. I should have actually read the stuff and not skipped any parts. So I read this, even though I was very uncomfortable. And
I was also very uncomfortable, just so you know.
Yeah, that makes total sense, but basically he is going at it with his girlfriend, and then in the middle of their little party, she starts turning into the Shrike.
Yeah, I think that's what happened.
Steel claws on his butt cheeks and stuff, it's crazy. So then he goes away. He's that's creepy, and then she's you will help us destroy the universe, and then she disappears.
Yeah.
And that was the end of chapter 2. Well, that was the end of his story.
I forgot how he got retrieved. I don't actually remember.
That might have been my least favorite chapter, just because of that uncomfortable feeling throughout, and it had a lot of loose ends that didn't make sense.
I will argue with you later about that opinion of yours. So I have one of the later chapters I actually dislike.
Okay.
So we will discuss that at the end. But basically, before and after every story, they travel a little bit, and the reason they're telling the stories is because they're basically doing nothing. They're either like sitting on a boat or sitting on a boat that goes over grass.
Yeah, pretty much.
A lot of boats. So nothing that interesting ever happens between the stories, I don't think. I mean, minor stuff gets revealed, but nothing crazy, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. On to chapter 3, right? Do you want to discuss chapter 2 a little bit?
No, I think that's it for chapter 2. I mean, I didn't really... I was mostly just trying to get through that chapter as quickly as possible.
It was a very long chapter, too. I think that was like one of the longest.
And one of the sad things is, I really thought that I was going to like Kassad, because he seemed like this kind of... There was this whole thing where he was forced to kind of take extreme measures with his fighting style with his soldiers, where he was like... They called him the butcher of whatever planet or whatever he was on. And so I thought it was going to kind of go into that, like his reasons for that, because the bad guys were going to like kill them all. The ousters, sorry.
Yeah.
The ousters were going to like kill them all, so he went into these extreme measures to kind of broke the like honor code that all the people had. So I thought it was going to go into that, but no, it was basically just about his girlfriend.
There was that, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. On to, I think, both of our favorite character, Martin Silenus' story.
Dude, he's so good.
Okay. How does it start? Okay. So he lived on Earth. He's insanely old. In this universe, people could just live to insane ages because of like medical things.
And there's also like time dilation and stuff when you like space travel, where it's the same kind of thing with like other sci-fi things, which is real, which is the theory of relativity, where you go close to the speed of light and then you stay the same age, but everyone else is older. But and there's that technology.
Yeah. So he lived on Old Earth. He left Old Earth because it was about to blow up, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Then he traveled to this one planet. I forgot what it was called. I don't remember. He traveled to this one planet. He did it using an unsafe method of travel. For context, the main method of travel is, how do you pronounce the word? The F-U-G-U-E.
Oh, yeah, I don't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah, okay, so basically they get frozen, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it was something like that.
Yeah,
really
so they get frozen, and it's safe to travel that way. He didn't travel that way, so his brain got all messed up. And when he arrived to the planet, he could only speak in swear words, and I thought that was hilarious.
It was
that was beautiful, especially since he was a poet.
Yeah.
He's like a poet.
Yeah. So
You could go.
So basically, once he gets to this planet, he's kind of just like working. Where's he working? He's working at some kind of like agricultural or like factory or something like that.
Was it to reproduce air? Was that his job?
Yeah, I don't know, but he's working at one of these, like very low class, like working hard jobs because they're taking advantage of him because he like is kind of not all there and he can only speak in cuss words. But yeah, then he's working there and he slowly regains his speech and starts like writing more poetry.
Yeah, and so eventually after he like relearns all his vocabulary, he leaves the planet. No, that's not what happened. He had his poetry with him, and he like tripped and fell over, right?
Oh,
and then some girl was like, "Oh, I'll help you up," and she read the poetry. Was like, "Whoa, this is awesome. We should get you to a publisher." So that's what happens.
Yeah.
And they, do what everyone does with poets, extorts them for money.
Exactly.
Basically, yeah.
So basically, what happens is he had this first book of poetry that he writes gets like super famous, and he gets a bunch of money from it, and then basically, after that, the publisher girl just forces him to basically keep writing crap that he doesn't like and that he thinks is horrible, just so he can make money.
Yeah, one thing I want to add on. So basically, he wrote a bunch of poetry. Some of it was of Old Earth, what they just call normal Earth here. And they told him to get rid of everything that wasn't Old Earth. So basically, every book is just like Old Earth 1, Old Earth 2, Old Earth 3.
Yeah.
And then he eventually got to like 10, and he just stopped writing poetry and just kept writing Old Earth stuff.
Yeah.
So he was stuck just writing stuff he didn't want to write.
Yeah.
And eventually, he convinced his publisher to like, hey, let me write my poetry again. She read it. She was like, oh, this is beautiful. He asked if it's going to sell well. She said no. He published it anyway. It didn't sell well. So he was back to writing bad stuff.
And then, what happened is, and then after a while, he was just writing bad stuff for a while. And how he says it is he lost his muse.
Yeah.
Where he kind of just wasn't able to write as good as more just because he was writing bad for so long. So then he chooses to go off with Billy, who's this other character. And so he goes with Billy to Hyperion, which they were actually some of like the first people to ever live on Hyperion, because this is like before the other chapters and such, way before. And so then he lives there for a while, and then the Shrike starts killing people. And this is also Sad King Billy. He's like kind of the king of Hyperion for a while, and he like has this town of artists. Is that what it's called?
Yeah,
the town of poets.
Yeah, it's City of Poets.
The City of Poets. Yeah, where he basically just like pays for like artists and people who are like artists deep down, but just can't get the public to buy their stuff. He just supports them so they can create the art there, and it's super great. Until the Shrike starts killing people, and then Martin starts writing again, because the Shrike is his new muse. And basically this goes on for a while until eventually Billy burns the poetry that Martin has been writing, because Billy believes that Martin's poetry is actually what's causing the Shrike to go and kill people and such, because it's kind of unclear, because Martin had actually read the legends about the Shrike before it actually started attacking, and he had actually started like writing his poetry before it attacked and such. So it actually is possible that that is why the Shrike is attacking people, is because of Martin's poetry. But anyway, Billy's like burning the poetry, and Martin is like super distraught, and he's like, no, please don't, that's I've been working on. And then he burns it, but then as he's burning it, the Shrike appears and kills Billy, which is kind of like, wait, is Martin controlling it? Like, this is so weird, but it's kind of unknown. There are lots of unknowns.
A lot of stuff goes unexplained in this book. There's a lot of interesting stuff, but they sometimes just never explain it for whatever reason. So there's a lot of tiny details that we left out, but that's basically the gist of the third story. Martin, for whatever reason, everyone hates him.
I know, he wasn't that unlikable, but there's several characters who were like, you say one more word and I'm going to blast your brains out. And I'm like, whoa. I mean, he's annoying, but like, in a likable sort of way.
I think that was pretty much everything with Martin. Every story kind of reveals stuff about the Shrike and the time tombs. We didn't mention the time tombs. The time tombs are where they're going to, because that's where the Shrike lives. I don't think this story really explained anything, but just showed like, well, it gave a little bit of background.
In the later chapters, they talk about like the time tombs being some sort of like bomb or something.
Yeah.
It's like going backward in time, but what does that mean?
Yeah. So basically, Martin just allegedly gets a bunch of people killed. And then we should mention this. There's this town called Keats on Hyperion.
Oh, yes.
That's kind of important, sort of, a little bit. I don't know why it's important, but it is.
Also, yeah, a lot of the stories are connected to John Keats, who was a famous poet that is like real from Earth. From like, you know, he's a real guy in history.
So we will come back to why he's important. He's a very relevant leader.
Yes.
But Keats is also mentioned in chapter 1 and 2, I'm pretty sure. Right?
Yeah, I think he's probably mentioned in every single one.
Yeah, he's mentioned in every single story. So, yeah, that's pretty much everything with chapter 3. You have to really read the book to see why Martin is great. We didn't really do a good job justifying why he was great, but he's a funny character.
He's great. Okay.
What was chapter 4?
Me too. I'm trying to remember because...
Sol Weintraub.
Was it?
Yes, it was him. Because after that is Bron Lamia.
Oh, yeah, it was. They have it in order in the front,
really?
too, which is nice. The priest, the soldier, the poet, the scholar. Sol Weintraub.
Okay.
Yeah.
This was the most tragic story.
Oh, it was so tragic.
Okay, would you like to lead off this one?
Okay, so, there isn't much to this, so I can just kind of, it's just a slow burn. So, basically, the whole plot of this one is Sol Weintraub, like, marries this girl, they have a child. This child grows up until, like, you know, his Sol Weintraub and his wife are both, like, in their 60s or 70s or something.
Yeah, something.
And their daughter is, like, 20 or 30, something like that. She's, like, all growing up, and she has, like, a boyfriend and everything, but she is doing some investigation on Hyperion in the time tombs, but then an
Specifically the Sphinx thing?
Yeah.
I don't know what's the difference between it. It was just there for an extra.
And then an accident happens with stuff that is, again, like, not really explained.
The something fields.
Oh, yeah, the entropic fields.
Yeah.
Haywire.
Basically, it's like time stuff. It wasn't that well explained, or I'm dumb. Either one of the two.
Nope, I didn't understand it either.
Okay, so. Yeah. So basically, there's these waves that do stuff.
Yeah. They apparently only affect, like, people. All of a sudden, they went over and all the things. The entropic fields, like, only affect people. So there have been times when, like, people were in a jet and they were going towards the time tombs, but then the entropic fields, like, killed the people inside, but then the plane still crashed and stuff like that. But then this accident happens, and then basically their daughter, Rachel, is aging backwards in time and forgetting things. Like, when she's 19, she only remembers stuff that had happened until she was 19. And then the next day she forgot what happens the day before and everything that happened. So basically she keeps aging downward and becoming like, and it's very tragic because Soul Weintraub and his wife, they're like desperately searching for a cure. And then the media gets all over them and it's horrible because the media just like wants to make this big thing about the daughter and they're just like, please leave us alone. And it's just very tragic. I mean, that's the gist of it.
I mean, the even more tragic thing is they move to another planet. Soul Weintraub like tells his wife, okay, you could go visit your cousin or sister or whatever it was. And then she just dies.
Oh, yeah. I totally forgot about that. Yeah, that was so sad.
Yeah, she just dies, unfortunately.
Oh, and another thing is, Soul Weintraub and also I think his wife and his daughter, they were all Jewish.
Yeah.
And that planet that they go to later is also like a Jewish planet that's mostly by Jewish people. But a weird thing is he, in his dreams, even before the accident, he has a dream that God tells him to take his daughter Rachel and like sacrifice her on Hyperion. And he's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And then the accident happens and it's like, whoa, it was like that connected, but like he didn't do it. And so then like this accident happened to his daughter. And then later he talks to his wife. And his wife had this like same dream, except later they find out the dreams were actually different in some way, and it's all very mysterious.
Yeah, I don't know why. Basically, his wife had the same dreams at the exact same times, and she just never told him for like 50 years.
Yeah.
That was so dumb, in my opinion.
That was a bit.
Yeah. So, yeah. Apparently their dreams were also slightly different, and they just never talked about it.
And then before we can like figure out exactly what's different about their dreams, she dies. So.
Yeah, so nothing gets revealed about the strike, really, right?
Yeah, not really.
I mean, they go into the Shrike Church, or Soul Weintraub does, and just don't they kick him out, right? I don't know why they kicked him out.
Yeah.
Oh, because he had the dream, right? That's why they kicked him out.
Oh, yeah, he told them about his dream, right? And then they were like, oh, we can't interfere, get away from her.
Oh, because Rachel's supposed to be like the chosen one or something, right?
Oh. Yes, you're right. Yeah, they said something about that when he's like, oh, we can't interfere with the blah, blah, blah child.
Yeah, so Rachel's the chosen one for some reason.
There's also another character that the Shrike Church says is like the chosen one, though, remember?
Oh, yeah, okay.
So
we'll explain that. Oh, it's the next chapter. So we'll get into it shortly. But so there's two chosen people, actually.
And there's kind of this like thing where, I don't know, for me, I'm like, are they going to like merge these people together to like create the Shrike? Because it's implied that like the Shrike was created in the future and then like went back in time. So I don't know. It's very mysterious. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, chapter 4 was the sad story. All of them were kind of sad. That one was the saddest because Soul Weintraub didn't even do anything.
Yeah. He just kind of stood there while his daughter de-aged and is now an infant. Oh yeah, so throughout Hyperion, throughout like even the previous chapters, like in between the stories, he's just had this baby, but we didn't know why until now when you find out that is his like 30-year-old daughter that's now been de-aged.
I think in the first chapter the console mentioned it because in this universe characters have this thing called a comm log, right? Comm something.
Oh yes.
And it's basically Google in your head. And so I think in chapter 1 he mentioned it. It's like, oh, this is their daughter Rachel, but I thought she was older or something. I think the console says that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm pretty
Probably
sure.
missed that. But
yeah. So.
Yeah. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. So that was chapter 4. Chapter 5 was Bron Lamia. I don't think we ever stated. Oh, we did. So Bron Lamia is a detective, right? Private investigator is what she was.
Yeah.
You liked this one. You could.
Actually, yeah. This was. Well, I'm not going to say because we're going to talk about that at the end of the video. You have to watch till the end to hear all my thoughts. But yeah, basically this one, she's a private investigator. Then this dude comes up and is like, oh, you got to help me. There's been a murder that happened. And then she's talking to him. She's like, okay, well, who was killed? And he's like, me. I was killed. And she's like, well, how are you here then? And he's like, I'm an AI in a human body. And they like stole some of my data, which I basically count that as dying. And she's like, okay, dude, like having some of your memory erased is not the same as dying. Like, you don't understand as us humans. Dying is dying. But anyway, then she discovers stuff about him. So to kind of give reference, she discovers through this guy who was an AI that there's kind of, well, everyone knows that there's like this AI, is it the all thing? Is that what it's called? Or something like that? Or no, that's a different thing, but then.
I forgot what the name was. There's like three. There's 3 factions. There's the humans, the ousters, and the AI.
Yeah, so basically there's this AI group that is like a third faction, like he said, and they're like made up of AI.
Yeah.
That pretty much sums it up. And so he is an AI, and you find out that he's actually a reconstruction of John Keats, where like they remade his personality in an AI. And so, but then someone has been like attacking him and stuff. So then she protects him, and then basically they kind of fall in love. And thankfully, this chapter, like they did like do stuff, but it skipped over it like an insane person would. And that makes me wonder, like, because technically this is the stuff that like each person described. Was Colonel Kassaad just describing all those details just at the table? He's like, yeah, so I met this chick in the woods and we were just going at it. And I'm like, and then that's like super weird. And then Braun Lammy, she's like, oh yeah, so I love this guy. And then, you know, he went and did that. And then she skips the next thing. Yeah. And I'm just like, bro, was Kassaad just listing off all these things?
Kassaad just being a jock in the corner. So yeah, I did do that. Here are the details.
Okay.
Okay. So anyway, Braun Lamia. I'm gonna say a few things that you kind of left out.
Sure. Yeah, I forgot some stuff.
So there's this guy who's trying to kill him, basically.
Yeah.
Or I don't know if you really left it out, or if you're going to it. But they go to Braun Lamia interviews a bunch of people around where the area was. Okay, we didn't explain this. There's this thing on things on planets called Farcasters, which is basically like time-space portals that.
Yeah.
You could go to other planets. And before John Keats died, his nickname in the story is Johnny, because, you know, Johnny's just cooler than John, obviously. He goes through the portal, and it keeps a record of everyone who's gone through the portal. And someone went with him through the portal. And basically, she just backtracked to the planet they originally started on. I forgot what the planet was called. And she went to this bar, met this guy, gave him money, and basically he told Braun Lamia everything about what he knew, which was basically Johnny went into this bar with two other people, right? Or he met one person there and he was with another person.
Yes, I believe so, yeah.
So we also didn't mention them. There are these tree people called Templars, right?
Yeah.
And basically they just have giant ships and just do stuff with them.
They seemed really cool.
Yeah.
And one of the 7 people is a Templar, but we'll get to him later. Actually, no.
No,
it already happened already. So yeah, he disappeared, and there was a bunch of blood. So like, oh, he's dead. But then like, well, we don't know for sure he's dead because we didn't find a body. There was blood everywhere. But it's kind of one of those things where like, okay, he's obviously not dead because they're kind of leaving it open, but there is blood everywhere, and we don't really know where he is until later.
Yeah, so the tree guy disappears, unfortunately, from the boat that they were on. Okay, so back to the story. Basically, she tracks down the guy that tried to, or technically already did murder Johnny, and they went to this Templar world, basically, which was just like a sanctuary place.
Yeah.
And basically, he ends up dying, and then they learn that he was also an AI guy. And how did they get to the church? How'd that happen? I forgot. Remember they wound up at the Shrike Church?
Oh, yeah. Well, I thought that was later.
How much later?
So, because there's the guy who was trying to kill Johnny, that the Braun Lamia then kills, and they find out he's the AI. He's also an AI. And then Johnny takes her to like that AI world that he was like created on, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So they went to Old Earth. It was a reconstruction of Old Earth.
Yeah, it was reconstruction.
And basically, that's where all the AIs live of the reconstructed people. So basically, they went to a complete replica of Italy, Rome. I forgot where it was.
I think it was in Italy, I believe.
Yeah. So they went there, and that's how it happens. They got attacked by people.
Yes.
They got attacked by real people this time.
Yeah.
And basically, she just tortures them until they tell
her that it's on the Templar world, right?
No, it's on the new Old Earth. Remember? Do you not remember?
No, I thought they were already on it, and then she tortures them and tells them like, where were you coming from? And then they.
No. What happened was they were on the old New Earth.
Yeah.
And they were sleeping together, and then they get attacked while they were sleeping together. And then Braun Lamia just fights back and then tortures them.
Yeah.
Until they tell them who they're sent by, pretty much. So it was on Old New Earth. I'm just going to call it that. That's not what it's actually called. But reconstruction of Old Earth.
Yeah.
So basically they make their way to the Shrike Temple. And would you like to talk about that?
Oh, is that where they find out? Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So then they find out that what Johnny had been trying to do, because, you know, his memory was lost because the person, like, killed him and that erased some of his data. So what Johnny had been trying to do was actually become an actual human by, like, cutting himself off from this AI part, just being fully in this body and being an actual human. But someone stopped him from that? I'm confused exactly. I'm forgetting the details now.
The conspiracy theory in the book was that if he became conscious of something that they didn't want him to be conscious about. Remember?
Oh, yeah. So he became conscious about it, and so it was like the AI were trying to kill him.
Yeah.
And then the other people that Bron Lamia had actually been torturing were actually trying to help them.
Yeah.
It's kind of sad. Oh, another detail that Johnny, as an AI, tells her. He tells her that the AI faction, there's different factions within the AIs,
Yeah.
and like half the AIs just want to eradicate humanity, which is like the classic trope, and half of them are for like protecting humanity. But recently, the half that are like just want to eradicate humanity have been kind of winning over, and so the AIs have calculated with certainty that. Actually, let me go back a little bit. So the AIs, what they've been trying to do is like make a new AI thing that can predict anything.
Yeah.
That's like an AI that's so smart that it can predict anything. And then once they finish that, they're basically going to kill all the humans and like rule the world, basically.
Yeah.
Was their plan.
One thing you kind of left out, they want to use the time tombs to do that, I'm pretty sure, right? Remember?
No, I don't think so. Well, they theorized that the time tombs must be either a weapon sent back from, it must be a weapon sent back from the future, but they're guessing that it is either a weapon from the humans, if the humans win the upcoming war, because the humans don't know that they're going to fight the AI, but the AI are like, we're going to attack the humans. And if we win, it's probably going to be a weapon sent back in time from us against humans.
Yeah.
Or if the humans win, it's going to be a weapon sent back by them against the AI that exists now, like from the future. And so, yeah, that was kind of like the AI are evil and they're going to kill us all, but it's just in one chapter and it never gets mentioned again. Yeah. It's like, that is, like, what?
Yeah. So, basically, in order to become sentient, Johnny wanted to go to Hyperion.
Yeah.
But they found a different way to do it, which was Lamia had this friend who went into the cyber world. I forget what it's called.
Yeah.
And basically,
he was like a hacker or something like that,
yeah,
along those lines. But
basically, he helps them. Johnny becomes sentient, but the guy BB, that was his name, died. So,
yeah, that was sad.
A casualty, I suppose.
And then more people come for them.
So after BB dies, I don't remember the exact timeline, but eventually they end up underground. And then this is a huge plot point that's never mentioned again, but Bron Lamia gets something implanted in her head.
Yeah.
Which is basically all of Johnny's information, I'm pretty sure, as an AI.
Yeah. Well, it's not, I thought it was not all his information, but like he became human, right? Because BB did the thing. And so basically he merged his personality and like his self with her, is what I thought, is that like his self was merged with her.
That may have been like it. Anyway, some form of Johnny was implanted in her head.
Yeah.
And basically they suit up by getting a bunch of illegal weapons and stuff, go to the surface, and then a big fight breaks out between Force and the two of them, and Johnny dies, unfortunately. And then Bron Lamia eventually makes it to the church because the church wants to help them. And basically what goes on is Bron Lamia gets into the church and then they worship her, I think.
Yeah. Right? When she says, when they see, they're like, oh, they call her all these like fancy religious title things, like, oh, the mother of blah, 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 blah. And it's kind of implied that like, because she, we totally mentioned this. She tells, like, after the story's over, that she's also pregnant with Johnny's child. So not only is like part of Johnny inside her mind, but she's also pregnant with Johnny's child. And so I remember there was some part in Hyperion during that chapter where they call her like mother of something.
Yeah.
So that also leads into my theory that like somehow they're going to merge different people, because there's like Rachel, who God supposedly told Soulweintraub to sacrifice, who they worshipped when she came to the Shrike Temple. And then there's also Bron Lamia, who was also like worshipped when she was in the Shrike Temple, and she has like this other person inside her brain that was like reconstructed, and she has this guy's child. So I'm like, there's this kind of thing where like the Shrike Church is like worshiping these people, so I think they might be connected somehow. But
maybe.
That's just a theory.
All book theory. Alrighty. So, does anything happen in between the story and then? I can't quite remember. I don't think anything that interesting happens. So, a little plot point was the consul didn't think he was going to tell his story because there was the Templar guy who just disappeared.
Yeah.
Who he thought was just going to fill the time between them starting the journey and them reaching the time tunes. And the consul got number 7, so he didn't think he was going to tell his story. So he was like, you'll never learn about me. And so the consul now has to tell his story, which is my least favorite one in my...
Really?
Yes. Actually, did you like that one?
I mean, it wasn't as... There were parts of it that were kind of boring because nothing really happened. But it was interesting to me because it was kind of a... It was very different from the other people where he, like... He is this... I mean...
Let's discuss it first. Would you like to take this one?
Just like go over the overview of it, right?
Well, I could also do it. So, basically, this is another one of those stories where he didn't really tell a story about himself until the very, very end.
Yeah.
He gives like the most condensed story ever, just like 3 pages, and that's his entire story. But basically, there's this guy named Marin, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
He was a space guy. And he did stuff on this one planet that I'm forgetting the name of.
Maui Covenant.
Oh yeah, Maui Covenant. He goes into space and returns back to this planet a bunch. The thing is, though, is while he's gone, time barely moves for him.
Yeah.
But the planet, it like ages like ultra fast and a bunch of stuff happens. A little bit more context I didn't explain. So they wanted to enter this planet into was it the Protectorate?
It's whatever the government is called.
Yeah, whatever it's called. And they wanted to place a Farcaster portal on that planet because it didn't have one yet.
Yeah.
So I think that's what Marin was doing. He was just setting all of that up.
He was setting it up, yeah.
So basically, he wanted to get stuff, basically.
Well, and on his like first visit there, he falls in love with this native girl from this planet. And then each time he comes back, he spends more time with her. But the thing is, he stays like roughly the same age, and she keeps getting older to where like they're like in love when he's like still like 30 or something, 20
like 20 and she's 70.
And and she's 70.
I will say, the main reason I don't like this story is because it was so disjointed in my opinion. It's like it jumped back and forth in time so much to where it made it slightly unenjoyable in my opinion. So,
but Devin, the message of this story, it's about like colonization, right? Of like these like people from the government colonize this little planet, and the people, they're telling the native people like, oh, this is good, you know, it'll bring like more people, more trade here, it'll be good for you. But then they start killing the dolphins. That was so sad.
Yeah.
So the native people there like kind of communicate with the dolphins. They figured out how to like semi-communicate with the dolphins. And there's also like these floating islands that like go around that have like dolphins on them or something. Anyway, it has like this really cool ecosystem and like traditions with these people here. But then like slowly, you know, as the colonization goes on, they kind of are just, they kill all the dolphins and it's just becoming like they're losing their heritage and stuff.
So basically, at the very end of the story, we'll jump forward in time a little bit. The planet just gets populated as like a resort planet pretty much. And like all resorts, everything gets destroyed pretty much.
Yeah.
All the dolphins die.
It's really sad.
Yeah. All the dolphins die, and then the people, the thing that I found like kind of sad was like the native people became the minority pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another thing that happened.
Jumping back in time again. So basically, what it was is Marin and his friend went down to the planet. His friend does dumb stuff and dies.
Yeah.
And then Marin falls in love with this girl, and then he just leaves without saying goodbye. And then he comes back, but they're still in love again for reasons unknown. And then they just keep going back and forth, and funny thing that I found funny is he has a child with her. He leaves, comes back, the child's like the same age or something. No, he's like 10 and he's like 20, basically. And he just keeps coming back and forth, and then she's like super old. And then the last time he comes back, she's just dead.
Yeah, and he has to like
that's basically the entire story.
No, but you missed the most important part.
Which
what do you
one?
mean?
Which part?
Did you just miss this about the story? So there are these kind of rebellious factions when he first falls in love with
I was
this
going to
girl.
talk about that. I was talking about the
that
main
makes
stuff
sense.
that happens.
Yeah, well, basically throughout the whole thing, there's this kind of undersea that you don't really think is going to be important, where like there are these rebellious factions within the native tribe.
The separatists, woo!
Yeah, the separatists. They're like, we don't want to be part of this new government thing. And you're like, man, they are just bad. Like they're doing violent stuff.
Yeah, basically, what's her name? I forgot her name. Siri.
Yeah.
So basically, Siri's like, yeah, they're dumb. They just go and die pretty much whenever they go and do stuff. And then later on in the story, would you like to explain what happens later on in the story?
Basically, slowly both Marin and Ciri kind of, like, towards the very end, are basically on the side of the Separatists.
Yeah.
Where at the beginning they were like, oh no, this is going to bring new trade. It's going to make us be part of this government with its protections and all these benefits. But then they start seeing the negative effects of it. And so by the end, when she's like been, several, like 60, or yeah, it's like
she's like 70 years old.
Yeah. And she's like 16 at the beginning when they first meet, and she's like 70 at the end, like, and after that she dies. So it's around 60 years have passed. Not for him, obviously, because he's been traveling. But then they see all the bad things, and they're basically on the side of the Separatists. And so then she dies, and basically her last will, right, for Marin was to destroy the Farcaster.
Yeah.
And so he does, and it's like this famous thing in history called like Marin's Rebellion or something like that. Or Ciri's Rebellion. It's called Ciri's Rebellion.
That's what it was.
But then it's this rebellion on Maui Covenant. And another interesting thing is we have heard about Maui Covenant previously when they're just like talking, because in the current day, it's a very well-populated like metropolis thing with like lots of people living there. But then like in the backstory, you learn that it was once like this beautiful planet, and then it's been colonized and stuff. Then you want to start talking about the console and how that relates to it.
Yeah, so the console is basically the great-grandson or just grandson?
It's either great-grandson or grandson.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
He's basically the great-grandson or grandson of Marin, and he's still a separatist. So basically what happened was he was on the planet when all that stuff was going down. He wanted to go and fight. They told him not to because he was obviously going to die, so he didn't. And then he just grew up and then started working as something. I can't remember what exactly it was.
He started working in the government to some degree.
And he just started flying up the ranks until he got like the highest possible position.
Of like consul or whatever.
Yeah, consul. And then there was this plan. I forgot exactly what happens, but long story short, he gets captured by the ousters.
Yeah.
And the ousters kind of like convince him to be a double. I was very confused. Is he triple agent or just a double agent?
He's just a double agent, basically.
Or is he just doing stuff because he wants to?
Well, so basically what it's explained is he like, oh, I went and visited the Ouster Society, and I lived with them for a while, and they're not even that bad. In my opinion, they're like superior to us. And I'm actually helping them, and I'm actually the Ouster spy. He reveals to all the other people, I'm actually the Ouster spy. But then, after all he says all that, like, oh, I actually think their society is superior, he's like, actually, I don't even care about like this government that we're a part of or the Ouster Society. I just want my revenge on the government for what they did to my planet and my family. So I'm basically just using the Ousters to try to get revenge on them. So I thought that part was very interesting. There just wasn't like nearly enough of it.
Yeah. I want to just stress how much information they put into 3 pages. Is like Marin's story was like a good decent amount of pages, like 50-ish pages.
That is a very good point. They could have condensed that part of it and then made the console's part considerably more.
And then the console talking about himself is just 3 pages.
Yeah.
I don't know why they did that. I thought that was a very bad choice. So basically, they revealed that the console is the Ouster spy, which was sort of predictable. Sort of. If you read the beginning, like the first chapter, it kind of just hints at it.
Yeah.
But he ends up being the Ouster spy. They're like, should we kill him?
And then eventually they decide not to.
Yeah. They're like right by the time tunes, pretty much.
So then they're about to get up and go to the time tunes. Hey, whoa, guys, it's Het Mastine, that Templar guy. Wait, he's right over there by the time tunes.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna, well, we can't catch up to him, so we're gonna sleep tonight. And then they get up the next morning, and they're like, okay, now we're setting up to the time tunes. And then the book ends.
There was the funny thing that they're singing the Wizard of Oz song. You know, we're off to see the wizard.
They did do that. Sol Weintraub, because he's like the scholarly dude.
Yeah.
He's like, there's this very ancient song from old Earth. And they start singing it, and then they all are singing, we're off to see the wizard, as they're like marching off towards the time tune to see the Shrike.
Yeah.
That will probably kill them all.
Oh yeah, there was that.
In Chapter 2, is that the same thing you just thought of?
Yeah.
So in Chapter 2, Colonel Kassad saw the tree, the Shrike. It's like the Thorns of Iron or something like that.
It's just a tree with spikes.
It's just a tree with spikes, but basically it has all of the victims of the Shrike impaled on it. And then after the story ends, the consul asks, or I don't think it's a consul, maybe it's someone. It's one of the people asks Kassad, because how the tree works and like how the time tunes and everything works is they're going back in time. So what one of the people asks is, so, right, people from the future, the Shrike's future victims are on that tree, right? And then they ask Fedman Kassad, Colonel Kassad, they say, did you see any of us on the tree, dead? And Kassad says, yeah, I did. but then he won't tell them which one. That was also something major I forgot.
Yeah. Nothing ever comes of that, by the way.
Well, I mean, it's only the first book, I imagine.
Yeah, that is true.
But yeah.
I imagine that a lot of stuff in the book will be elaborated on in further installments of the story.
Yeah.
So that was basically the majority of Hyperion. We did leave out some stuff. We probably forgot like some major plot point somewhere along the lines.
Probably.
That was basically Hyperion.
That's pretty interesting. Okay.
Overall, good book.
What would you rate it out of 10?
Out of 10, I'd give it a solid 9. I'd give it a 9.
Woo! That's actually better. I was thinking like a 7, but
A 7?
I mean, no, that's pretty good for me. I'm usually pretty like hesitant to give anything like a 9 or a 10, but
Me too, but I enjoyed this like more than I thought. If I enjoyed something more than I think I enjoy it, then I think it's
fair
pretty
enough.
good.
I think it's either a 7 or 8. I'll say 7.5 probably for me, because there were some parts of it that I liked, and there were some parts of it that I didn't like. I just think it's not necessarily my style because I really like characters with my thing, because I really like the characters, and because we were only given like one character at a time, I didn't really. I think it was very good in like the writing and how it was done. It just didn't have the stuff that I really like about like the books I really love. So I'll give it a 7.5 out of 10. And then, okay, I am all about the ranking. So now I want us.
You want to rank the chapters?
I want to rank the chapters and the characters.
Because
those might be different.
Okay.
Okay, so you go first.
We
you want to do chapters or characters first?
We'll do chapters first.
Oh,
okay,
yeah,
so there's 6 chapters. Okay. How should I order them in how much I enjoyed them or how interesting? I'll do it how much I enjoyed them.
Yeah.
Okay, start from the bottom. My least favorite was probably the console.
Really?
Yes, okay.
Oh, that's actually shocking. Okay.
Okay. I just did not like how it was written. I did find it interesting. The main problems with the console story is they focused way too much time on his grandfather,
Very
Marin.
true. That is.
And they spent so little time on the console himself. And the other thing that I didn't like is how it jumped around so much during Marin's story. I felt like it just jumped around way too much, in my opinion.
Fair enough.
Yeah. The soldier is number, what number? The 5.
Yeah.
So, how should I put it? It's not that it was horrible. It's that I just didn't want to read 70 pages of relations, I will say.
Yeah.
It was also very graphic.
It was very graphic with the violence and the relations.
It was the craziest chapter, I will say.
Yeah.
I just didn't like it as much as the other ones, mainly because it was just that. It was just that.
Agreed.
Okay. So number 4, we have the priest. I actually really I'm ranking them on how much I enjoyed them. I found it very intriguing.
Yeah, I would agree.
It was very interesting. I think that one kind of had like the most world building sort of Hyperion itself.
Yeah.
You just learn a lot about Hyperion in this one chapter. It's like some of the other chapters don't even talk about Hyperion that much. And this chapter just like introduced the reader to a race of Shrike worshippers and the Shrike himself. It just shows like the immense power of the Shrike pretty much without actually showing it.
Yeah.
Because he just like appears, he stares at this guy menacingly and just leaves pretty much. Also just weaves like a bunch of religion into the story, which I did not think was going to appear at all.
Yeah. That was super. Oh, another thing that's kind of funny. I don't mean to be insensitive, but it is kind of funny. I am Christian myself, actually. But I'm allowed to say this. In Hyperion, it's funny because, like, the Christian church, well, I think here it's specifically Catholic, which I'm not actually, I'm Catholic, but basically the Christian Catholic church is kind of, like, fading away.
Yeah.
And it's portrayed as, like, this, like, fading away thing, and then the, like, last believers are like very strong in their faith, which was interesting, but also kind of funny because in most literature and fiction, then like the Christian church is like very strong and prominent, but they're kind of like fading away, and then it's like the Shrike cult is like this prevalent thing.
Yeah. I will add one little tidbit. The Shrike cult I found just to be very weird. I did not understand that at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Zion's reaction just perfectly represented my feelings about the Shrike Church. They didn't really do much.
It seemed like there was a whole bunch that was foreshadowed about them, but there was absolutely nothing revealed about them at all throughout the whole book.
So yeah, they're just there to have fun, I guess.
I don't even understand. It's like apparently one of the biggest churches in this world. It's literally a cult that worships this dude who goes super fast and kills people. I'm like, okay, I mean, to be fair, I would probably be pretty into that too.
I see. He is pretty awesome. He's made of metal. He has 4 arms, which for whatever reason he only has 2 arms in the picture.
Yeah.
I mean, he seems pretty epic. I mean, it's on Hyperion, so no one outside of Hyperion's getting hurt, so why should they care?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, number 3, I will say the Scholar. Since I'm ranking them out of enjoyment, the Scholar wasn't that enjoyable, mainly because it was basically just a tragedy, a downright tragedy. I enjoyed it for what it was. It was just a fine short story if you just read it that way.
Yeah.
I just found it very, just like I said before, I hate to be repetitive, but I can't find the right words. It was just very sad. It did also just reveal some stuff about how Hyperion works, so that was kind of interesting.
Because his daughter was like researching it and whatnot.
Yeah, but I just like this story because it was straightforward and sad. I don't know how else to explain.
Fair enough.
It was the easiest to understand story. I'll put it that way.
Very true.
So I did like it. Number 2 for me is the detective. I know when we talked about it earlier, I said I didn't like it very much. I thought about it. And I did think that was probably one of the more enjoyable ones.
Yeah.
So the detective. This one I just found very interesting. So I forget when this book was written. It was in the 80s, right?
No idea.
Okay. Well, this book was written a long time ago, and they talk about AI humans. And that's just very fun, I guess.
Yeah.
Basically, it'd be funny if the AI overthrow humans. And like they're like, hey, look at that. AI overthrow humans in this book probably at some point.
Yep.
I did like a lot of the world building because they went to a lot of planets in this one.
Yeah.
Because some of the stories were just centralized in singular planets. This one, they went a lot of places. Like, they introduced a lot of worlds that, like, I remember the names. Like, TC to the power of 2. I don't remember what that is.
Oh, yeah. TC squared, which is, like, the Tau Ceti Center.
Yeah, that. Yeah. So, like, I can't remember where Lamia's from. They said that planet's name so many times, I just can't remember. But the story of John Keats I found super interesting. So, basically, why he wanted to go to Hyperion, I think, is because he wanted to go to Keats, right? Is that why?
Oh, why he wanted to go to Hyperion is because at that point, it wasn't part of, like, the government thing.
Oh, yeah.
So it was the only place he could go to actually, like, not be an AI. Because he wanted to actually be John Keats and, like, be a real human. But he couldn't do that if there was, like, all this external stuff that was, like, all this AI and all this technology that would be present in, like, the mainstream worlds. So he was trying to go to Hyperion because there he would be able to fully be, like, his human John Keats. So.
Yeah. I also really like this story because this is like one of the stories where I'm just like rooting for the characters the entire time because they didn't really do anything wrong. Like some of the other characters, you're a little skeptical of them. They're like, yeah, should you have done that? But in this case, I don't think they really did anything wrong. So
yeah,
it's like all around pretty good story. Johnny dies, which was kind of sad.
That was so sad
because like they're like on the front porch of the Shrike Church, which was gonna protect them. They're like, we could make it, and then he just dies, unfortunately.
Yep.
So, that was pretty sad.
And then I know you're number 1, and I'm not surprised.
The Scholar. The reason I like that one is no lore reasons at all. It was just funny.
What, the Scholar? You said the Scholar.
Oh, no, the Poet. The Poet, mainly because it was funny. No other reason.
Yep, there.
Martin Silanus, I think, is the best character in the book, mainly because he's funny. Every other character is just like stone-faced the entire time, talking about doom. And Martin Silanus is like, I'm gonna get super drunk and make everyone mad, and that's pretty fun. His story was just the funnest to read, in my opinion, because he just did a bunch of funny stuff. I mean, at the very end, people were getting killed left and right, and some of it did get a little graphic. But I mean, for the most part, he was just writing and just having fun. So that's why I liked that one. Okay, so what's your
Okay, my ranking. Okay, bottom of the list for me has got to be The Soldier, Chapter 2. I mean, for me, it was just I think the majority of it was, like, sex scenes.
Yeah.
It was just, I mean, not only does that make me uncomfortable, but, like, you're not really doing anything with the story. Why do you need to rehash the same thing 50 times?
Okay, so I hated how much detail went into. I just wish it's like, okay, they did it, move on. Instead, it was like entire paragraphs of just detail. I was like, is it gonna end soon or?
Yeah, I mean, boy, oh boy. And I really thought I would like that chapter because it was about like a soldier dude, and usually they have like shooting stuff and killing people, which is interesting.
He did a little bit of that.
He did a little
like
bit
the
of
tiniest bit.
Honestly, the best part of this chapter was like at the very end when he reveals that like one of them is going to die. That part was like super interesting.
Yeah.
But then the whole rest of it just kind of was like boring and just like, I don't know. There wasn't much to it besides just like sex scenes and that kind of just like, I don't really like it. Next for me would probably be The Scholar. I liked Sol Weintraub's story, and it was very sad, but not a lot happened.
Yeah, it's kind of a slow one.
Yeah, it's just like even when we win over it, you know, his daughter is slowly aging down, and that's the whole plot of it. Whereas the other ones I felt like were a lot more jam-packed with stuff. Even the console story, which was like also very slow in the beginning, had like it was more interesting to me than that one. Just because, and I liked it, but Chapter 2 is the only one that I would just say is bad, and I just wouldn't really want to read that again. But like, this one is still good, and I liked it, but it's just not as good as some of the other ones, and I didn't enjoy as much. Next would probably be The Priest. I liked, like, how you said, I think this was definitely the most interesting one, because it definitely had like kept me guessing the most about like, what are these creepy children people that are like kill people and like are doing these weird cultish things, and it definitely had like a different air to it, kind of like that mystery kind of thing.
I mean, one thing I'd like to add, the fun thing about this one specifically, the first chapter, is it was a journal, so it's like dates.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
Instead of just telling a story, it's like writing down my diary, basically.
Yeah.
And I did like that aspect of it. I mean, if it was an entire 500-page book of that, I would not enjoy it. But like a chapter, it's fun.
And then I really empathized with, I did like with Father Jurai how he's like, I need to kill myself. And I actually super respect him for like, he went through excruciating pain because he had to get like zapped and burned by the trees like a bajillion times before he finally died. And yeah, just like he actually was like one of the most likable characters, and we never actually met him. We just had journal entries from him. Yeah. But I liked him a lot. And he had like even some stuff he did some bad stuff that was like questionable but still understandable. Where
Didn't he just like fabricate evidence? He
fabricated evidence, yeah, that people like a long, long time ago, even before like on different planets other than old Earth, had like worshipped Jesus to try to like keep his church alive, which was like. And that's why he was going to Hyperion, is because he was actually exiled by the church leaders for doing that, because they're like, dude, you can't do that. Yeah. But, I mean, it's understandable. He was trying to, like, save his religion, even though he did make up stuff, which was like, oh, but, you know, he is likable. Next one. Oh, this is where it gets really hard for me, because these next ones I all really like. These next three.
Oh, I didn't notice this. They put Het Mustine's story in here, even though it never happened.
I actually really like that, because then it doesn't spoil it, because you think
that's
it's
so smart. Okay, that's so smart. I didn't realize that until now.
But yeah, I mean, I was looking forward to reading Het Mustine's story, because, you know, he's like this tree Templar who has like this psychic bond to his tree ship, which is like these huge ships that can hold like millions of people. And he's also called like a Templar, which is like, you know, usually they're like the monks who like fight people. It's like, dude, this guy's gonna be so freaking cool. And then we never got a backstory for him, and I was like, oh. But yeah, I was sad about that. But let's see, next for me, oh boy, I'm gonna have to go The Poet, which pains me to do because I really like Martin, but his story for me, was mostly enjoyable because of him.
Yeah.
And later, also, towards the end, when it had, like, Sad King Billy, I also really liked Sad King Billy, and they had a great relationship.
He's funny. Sad King Billy's funny.
Yep, he was great. But for me, it was mostly carried by, like, those two characters, not necessarily, like, the plot itself. Because, I mean, I do like poets, and, like, a poet who's struggling to write stuff and who was also working and can only say swear words, you know, that's relatable. We all go there. It just wasn't as, I mean, like, these ones are obviously the ones that are super good, and this could easily shift up to, like, number 1 or 2. Yeah, for now, that one's number 3. Then next, I think, is, for me, my number 2 is the Consoles story. Because although the beginning of it was very slow and didn't feel a lot, I felt like it was a very good payoff, because for me, it really subverted my expectations, because it's at the beginning, it's set up to just kind of be like this romance, like, oh, they're falling in love. Like, I'm like, oh, this is just like a romance story that the console is telling us for, like, who knows what reason. I have no idea. Yeah. But we're just learning about this love story between, like, these people. And that was kind of weird that he's, like, in love with a 7-year-old woman. But it was excusable.
I don't think that was the age, but I mean.
Well, huh?
She was 16.
Well, at the beginning, she was 16, but then.
Oh, you said 70. I thought you said 7. I was like, oh.
Oh, no. Yeah, she was like 16 at the beginning and 70 at the end. So, but it was like, oh, I get why that is there, because, you know, it was, I don't know what I'm saying. Okay.
Yeah, that was basically me doing my ranking too. So
it was fine. Okay. Like, I was okay with that relationship, even though it was kind of weird because they had been together for like a long time, and
well, in her eyes, the other guy, Marin, he was like just like 2 years had gone by, basically.
Yeah. And so, but it really subverted my expectations, because I thought it was going to be about this romance thing, but then it turned into like this revolutionary, like cautionary tale about like just wanting to join the mainstream thing that I actually thought was really interesting, because I'm an anarchist. Okay.
I didn't realize that.
No, I mean, I'm totally joking. I'm not an anarchist. But anarchist themes do really interest me. That sounds very suspicious, but in the, like, they're just themes that resonate with me that I find very interesting, and it's like a philosophy that I can empathize with, even if I don't necessarily believe in, like, anarchy, but just because they're usually tied, like, more individualistic philosophies and stuff. So I usually like kind of anarchy stories just because they're interesting to me, and so this kind of being like, oh, it's a romance, and then it's like, nah, destroy the Farcaster.
Yeah.
Series Rebellion was kind of cool. And then I really loved the little time that we had with the console where he's like, so actually, everyone that we've met so far thinks that the Ousters are just like this boogeyman. Like, they're just evil. They're just evil, they're creepy, they like have evolved to learn the space, they're barely even human. And then the console's like, no, I mean, I lived in their society and they were better than us. I don't even care about that, though. I just want revenge. And I was like, hey, I mean, I like this dude.
Everyone loves a good revenge story, I'll
exactly.
tell you what.
And it really did empathize with the previous story where, like, because of the rebellion, a bunch of bad stuff has happened. So I was like, oh, yeah, I am motivated by his revenge. And I did like that. Because I think, overall, the story was one of the weaker ones. Yeah. Like, technically, just for me, I really liked, like, the themes and the console's character. Even though it was like at the very end and there wasn't very much of it, yeah. I just really liked that. And these top three are very interchangeable, as I already said. And then for me, my number one is the detective story with Ron Lamia, just because this one felt the most like a regular story to me. Mm-hmm. You know, it has like a regular sci-fi story where there's like this mystery intrigue where she's like a private investigator, and then there's this romance thing, and then there's like the evil AI. There were just like all these tropes that I like. I mean, and they were just kind of, it felt the most homey to me and kind of just the most interesting, just like on a regular, like, oh, like I like this kind of thing. There's like lots of action, there's this little romance thing, and then there's like this AI thing, and then I thought it was cool how like he like went into her mind, and it was just overall it was the best. Because with the console story, like the themes and the console's character, I liked better than anything in the detective story. And for the poet, I liked Billy and Martin's character better than anything in the detective. But the detective story with Bron Lamia just felt for me like the most well-rounded and how much I liked it. Mm. Which is like, oh, there's nothing really I don't like about it. It's just the one I like the most.
Nice. Okay. Let's do a character ranking.
Okay.
Okay, so...
Wait, can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
For me, my favorite character, Hetmastine, bro. Best character, 10 out of 10. I mean, we only got a very little bit with him, but he was called a Tree Templar. He was really cool. I want to see more of that dude.
Yes. Okay. I wasn't even going to rate him, but I'll put him in the list anyway. Okay, so, in my opinion, even though I ranked his story so high, I think Father Hoyt is like one of the lower tier characters. Basically, the entire story, he's just in pain. I mean, he does bring out a little instrument and plays a little bit.
Yeah.
But he's in pain the entire time. He doesn't really contribute with anything, I don't think.
Yeah.
He's just there for the ride. He questions everything for whatever reason. Yeah, he's just not a good character. It's like, if they put Father Duray in there, that would have been pretty cool.
He would have been one of my favorite characters, but...
But instead we got Father Hoyt, who didn't really do anything. Next up, I also rated his story pretty highly, but I just don't think he was the greatest of characters. Sol Weintraub. I'm not saying that he was bad, but out of the other characters, I don't think he was the greatest. I do like his dedication to trying to save his daughter. That was pretty fun. Outside of that, I don't think he really had a personality. I mean, he was nice.
Yeah.
But, like, okay, the thing is, about this book, you spend so little time with any of the individual characters.
Yeah.
So you only really get to learn about them through their singular story. Mm-hmm. And some of the some of the stories, they don't even really mention, like, the main character. Like, in the cases of Father Hoyt and the Consul. Like, the Consul, they explained a lot in very little time. In Father Hoyt's case, barely anything was explained about him. Yeah. So, unfortunately, that's why Sol Weintraub's rated so low. Basically, he just wants to save his daughter, and he's a nice guy. That's basically what I get from that. Okay. There's kind of sort of a tie, in my opinion, between the soldier and the detective. So I'll just explain why I like them individually. Outside of the soldier's story, he was a pretty cool character. I liked him.
I actually liked him.
Yeah. So his only downfall was his story. Everything else about him, he's basically commando guy. He goes in, he has the cool weapons, he makes sure everyone's safe. He does all the extreme stuff, like in between two of the stories, they need to get a tram working. And basically,
that part was so cool.
Yeah, basically, he went up, started the tram, and then he had to run all the way back down and jump onto the tram.
While it was going, he had to run and catch up to it before it could start.
So he was a pretty cool character. His only downfall was his story, because his story was not the greatest. Okay, so I said it was a tie with Bron Lamia, the detective. I think she was just a pretty solid character, in my opinion. Like, how do I explain it? She was pretty normal, I guess.
The worst thing about her is she apparently hates Martin Silenus for some reason. She repeatedly threatens to kill him if he won't shut up. And she actually has like a little like death laser she can do him with. And I'm just like,
no, she just has a normal gun. Oh, she also has the laser though. Never mind. She has a gun and a laser.
Yeah, she repeatedly threatens to kill him. That's one thing I didn't like about her character. It was a little like off-putting, like, whoa, you hate this guy so much. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, they just disliked Martin for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Okay, number 2 is the Consul.
Hey!
I didn't like his story that much, but the Consul, I think, is a really cool character.
Yeah.
He's just doing what he wants for revenge's sake, pretty much.
Oh, one thing I even forgot about that made me really like the Consul is the Consul says, like, after his story is over and he's like talking to the people, he's like, oh yeah, so I actually went to the Shrike and I don't even have a wish or anything. And then what was super sweet and made me like him a lot is he's like, and actually I don't have a wish, blah, 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 blah. But then Sol Weintraub is talking to him and he's like, and then the Consul's like, actually, if I do get a wish, I'll wish for your daughter to be healed. And that was very heartwarming.
That was great of the Consul.
Yeah.
And they hug it out there. That was pretty fun.
That was a good moment.
Really good moment. Which leaves number 1. We got Martin Silenus. I just like him because he's just kind of a jerk, but he's a funny jerk, pretty much. Yep. He's a poet, so he writes poetry, and most of it's, for the most part from what I read, wasn't the greatest, but just super interesting stuff about Hyperion. Yeah. Hyperion. You had your little conspiracy theory. Do you want to explain your conspiracy theory about Martin Silenus and the Hyperion cantos?
Oh, so yeah, Martin's poems that he writes about Hyperion are called the Hyperion cantos, and I've seen this online, like this series, the Hyperion series, is called Hyperion cantos. So, and in his story, it's kind of insinuated, in Martin's story, it's kind of insinuated that maybe his poems are like shaping what happens with the Shrike, and because the series is named after his poems, I'm like, maybe that is the case, because it seems like that's very possible. And I mean, obviously, Martin is awesome, so I want him to be controlling the world with his poems. That's just awesome to think about.
I think that was everyone. I didn't rate the Starship Captain just because you know nothing about him.
Okay, I was joking when I said Captain. I mean, he just seemed like a cool guy. We didn't know him at all, though.
I mean, he's a tree guy. How much cooler can you get?
Yeah.
Okay. What are your opinions?
Yeah. The worst one, number 6, is Father Hoyt. We didn't get anything from him in his chapter. It was all about someone else. And then through the whole rest of it, he barely says anything, and he's just kind of like on drugs and like in pain, which like I empathize with, but I don't really care at the same time because we never really got to know him. So not much to say about him. Dang.
It's kind of hard.
Yeah, I'm realizing now. I'm like, there were some of these characters, I'm like, well, you rated them so low, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to rate them low. For me, okay, this is close, but I'm going to do Soul Weintraub, which I was like, what, Soul Weintraub? Yeah, he seems like an actually interesting guy, and he is very different from the rest of them, in that he's so old, and he's always like the voice of reason, and like the nice one, the calm one. But yeah, he's just not as interesting as any of the other people, because he doesn't really have as strong, I mean, no, he very much wants to save his daughter, but this is not as interesting as any of the other people's personalities or motivations. Then next, this one's kind of close for me, is Kassad, Colonel Kassad, because yeah, like Devin said, the other parts in the book, he seemed like a super interesting, kind of just like the cool captain stereotype, like soldier dude, which was cool, and I like that, but his own chapter just didn't give him much, and so that kind of sucks for him, but then next, dang, our lists are actually like very similar. Yeah, our lists are basically identical. Okay, next is Braun Lamia. She's pretty cool. I also like how now she has like Johnny inside her mind somehow, which is like, that's cool to think about. And she just was kind of, again, with like Kassad, and I think this is why you kind of rank them in center. Kassad is kind of just the cool soldier stereotype. She's the cool detective stereotype.
Yeah, basically.
Which, I mean, I love both of those. And I just put her a little higher just because we got more of her in her chapter. The worst thing about her is that she hates Martin for some reason. But, yeah, she was generally pretty cool, and I liked her story and stuff. Yeah, she was pretty cool. Then next, I just have 2 left, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, next, the consul. I really liked him. I mean, the revenge. Who doesn't like revenge, dude? That was just so good. And he's just like, I don't care about the world government. Or, well, I mean, he does care about the world government. He's like, I'm not on anyone's side. I just want my revenge. And then he's like, oh, but if I get a wish, I will save your daughter. That was just like, bro, the perfect mix of like, just like venge-filled, rage-filled. And they're like, oh, he has like a sweet heart. We got so little from him. Actually, we got quite a bit from him because each of the parts in between for him were from his perspective.
Yeah.
But in his chapter, we didn't get much from him, but the part that we did get was very good. And then the last character, there is no contest for this. Martin Silenus is obviously the best character, the poet. I mean, he's just so funny. Like, everyone else is so serious, and he's just like cracking jokes and just cussing all the time, and it's funny. Like, I mean, it's so funny. Everyone else is so serious, and just the fact that he is just constantly like, he just constantly is being annoying, and so who doesn't like that? I mean, yeah, what can I say?
So.
Okay.
Do you think that's it, or do you want to discuss anything else?
What are we gonna do now? I feel like we should like close it off with something.
We probably should.
Wait,
what?
Guys, oh my goodness.
Oh,
It's all a lie. It's all a lie.
Why?
In the beginning of this book, it says all of the characters in this book are fictitious, and any resemblance to actual persons living or dead is purely coincidental. There's literally John Keats
true.
in this book.
Lies.
Lies. It's all lies. Okay, I'm just joking. We all know that authors base their books off of their real experiences, so whenever it says that, you're like, that ain't true. No, but I've just proven that's a lie.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start suing whoever wrote
this
that.
40-year-old book starts suing them.
Yeah.
I've noticed some inconsistencies.
Yeah, I mean, if you just watched the whole video and have not read it, I mean, what are you doing? We just spoiled the whole book for you. Go read it. I mean, if it sounds interesting.
The whole reason we recorded this is so you could disagree with our opinions.
Yes. So comment below. Start hating on all of our opinions if you want to.
I know for a fact my opinions are very bad. I put very minimal thought into why I like things. You could change my mind if you comment down below.
Yeah, comment, and then you can even do your own rankings of either chapters or characters or both, and I will probably read them because small YouTube channel with like that many viewers.
Yep. That's been Hyperion. Thank you, Zion, for inviting me on.
Yes.
I had a lot of fun.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's everything. And I may or may not see you guys on another video. Who knows?
Who knows? Okay. Coolio. Bye.
Bye.